I hope you're all well and good. This was a chaotic one, and I've had to take notes because there's so much things to dissect out here. First lap incidents, bloody tyre offsets, thermal deg versus tyre wear temps. Is it old school? Are we down for the new school stuff where these guys are managing all this stuff in real time? It's not proper racing, the naysayers will say. Foster, we're going to get to it, bruv, because you've got to feel bad for Checo Perez now. How can you not feel bad for the Mexican at his home Grand Prix, especially when you see scenes post-race where he looks like a man forlorn? He looks lost. He looks like a man who's realising that that was potentially his last bite at his home Grand Prix. Cherry, I personally felt so bad for Checo Perez, but this is racing now. And these are the risks, peddlers, that you take as a racer. He even cites in the post-race press conference the late great Ayrton Senna. If you no longer go for a gap, then you're no longer a racing driver. You know, I don't hate Checo. Okay, so the outcome wasn't fantastic, but do you hate the fact that Checo Perez went for it? Okay, so you can levy the old, he was too eager, he didn't chew his food before swallowing it. That is the critique of Checo Perez for that first lap, first turn incident. But bloody Norris, home Grand Prix, the races that he's had, the poor form that he's been having over the past few races, I can't begrudge Checo Perez that. I mean, he got an incredible launch, isn't it? This is the gift and the curse when you get a fantastic launch off the line. What do you do with it? The temptation is always to keep your foot down on the loud pedal. You can't. It's the smart thing to ease up a little bit, stay in the race. You can't win if you don't first finish the race. And that was the lesson that ultimately Checo Perez is going to learn from that first lap, first turn incident. But you know what, peddlers, I'm going to be honest. Sandy's back, hopefully. Jeez, you guys saved my life there. I don't know what happened. Look at that. I'll be honest with you guys. As I'm reading, I'll summarize. If you guys have, yeah, sorry guys, I'm Noddy Cameron over here, technophobe extraordinaire. Read out what Checo Perez said very quickly. He would have been very disappointed to have been on the podium knowing that he didn't go for it lap one, turn one. He wasn't expecting Charles Leclerc to brake as late as he did. Obviously, his turn angle being much more acute than Checo Perez, who had the something similar to the racing line. Back off and go home were his options. Holy smoke. Holy smoke, that makes me really sad, man. And then you get the post-race, you see him kind of walking around. He gives that interview to Rachel Brooke. And then you see Christian Horner doing the empathetic managerial thing, putting his arm around a forlorn Checo Perez. And that makes me think back to the internal conflict that we're seeing currently at Red Bull. And I think we got proof positive of Christian Horner's reaction to Checo Perez, that internal conflict between Christian Horner and Helmut Marko is born of their differing opinions as far as Checo Perez. I'm convinced that Helmut Marko wants to get rid of Checo Perez for 2024. I'm even more convinced that Christian Horner is cognizant of everything that Checo Perez has done, that he owes Checo Perez, the Mexican Minister of Defense, a debt of gratitude. Ergo, wants to keep him on. There's me. That's my hot take. But devastating, man. And then you get the crowd starting to filter out. Holy smoke. All weekend, the chant was Checo, Checo, Checo. Pre-race weekend, there'd been a madness because in a Mexican periodista, in a periodical newspaper, they'd cited an old diplomatic incident. The headline read, Corres y Terras, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, race and go home. And again, citing Helmut Marko's xenophobic, racist, stereotyping, typecasting comments that you don't belong, you're not welcome here. Helmut Marko, Max Verstappen, Red Bull, race and go home because we don't like how you've treated us. And the article then continued and started elaborating on the race director of the Mexico City Grand Prix trying to cool temperatures, saying to the Mexican public, listen, everybody's welcome here. I don't want to incite violence. Let's cheer both Checo Perez and Max Verstappen. But there was a humongous reaction to that, wasn't there? It was crazy. That newspaper needs to take a bit of flat, not quite insightful, not incendiary, but a bit techie as a headline. And the joke that for those of you political historians, what they're citing there was a time, I can't remember the name of the Mexican president, but he told Fidel Castro way back in the day, the comes y te vas, to hurry up and eat, so that when George Bush arrived, that he didn't fracture Mexican and American diplomatic relations. You can't use that headline. Sure, you can't cite that, surely. I mean, I think that's incendiary. I'll be honest. I think that's incendiary. I didn't like the headline, even though the body of the article went on to try and implore cooler heads to prevail. I didn't like the headline in itself. It was very clickbaity. But I digress. What a shame for Checo Perez, man. And then what was worse, in the lead up to the race, bloody Crofty was pitching those questions back at Checo Perez, wasn't he? There was this headline, said Crofty, what do you think about it? And so then it falls very firmly on Checo Perez's shoulders to call and implore cooler heads, to ensure that cooler heads prevail, right? Don't boo Max, cheer me. Ugh. He looked like that might be the last time, right? That might be his best and last opportunity to win his home race. Oh. And then as far as the incidents go, it's a racing incident, isn't it? Was Charles Leclerc, could you make the argument that Charles Leclerc was a bit ambitious to not pull out of a move that was 3 deep into there? I think you can. I think no, Samir Lewis hasn't been DQ'd yet. I see the joke though. I think you can make that argument that Charles Leclerc was a tad ambitious, but ultimately you've got to keep the line. As per Fernando Alonso, right? You've always got to leave space, and sadly for Checo Perez, he did not leave space. Let me talk about Max Verstappen off of that start. Super crafty from the Dutchman. What he's done there is like 200 level IQ, and he did it twice, not only off the first start, but off the restart as well. Let me explain to you what he's done there. I think the Ferrari boys have had a look, and they expect him to come around the outside, just like he did to Bottas and Lewis Hamilton in 2021. Max Verstappen has caught them both napping right. Super brave, gone in between them both, down the middle. I mean, if you were going to predict before race, you wouldn't expect him to go between both of them. And it's only worked. It's like a surprise attack almost. Neither one of those expected him. Carlos was like, you could see Carlos thinking that he was going to do what he did in 21 and do one round the outside, as Max Verstappen is never afraid to do. Didn't do it. Pulled a fast one. Max has got this I don't want to do the Max soliloquy just yet. But Max has got this habit now of like he's a racing chess player indeed. He's seen what you give him and he's reacting accordingly, isn't he? He's going to do whatever you wherever your weak underbelly strategically on track, that's what he's going to poke at. And he did it the first time round, going up the inside in between both of the Ferrari pain, which was levels. That was nuts. And then into that first chicane, the turn 1, turn 2, he's done something on the second restart that I don't think he gets enough credit for. Here's what happens, right? When you pull off an overtaking move, there's normally a penalty to be paid. There is an overtaking tax that the overtaker needs to pay, because normally he goes so sufficiently offline that he can't be as quick as the person that he's overtaken through the ensuing set of corners. But Max has got this weird habit of doing this, and I've clocked it. He did it at Imola last year when he overtook Charles Leclerc in the sprint race. He overtakes and he doesn't pay a tax. It's punk. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do this the way he does. I'll be honest with you guys. Like, he pays no tax on the ensuing corners. Now, he did it on the first time, the very first race start, it was similar. But on the race restart, the second time round, it was clear blue. Bonkers level of the way that he, okay, so different circumstance. Let me articulate this properly. So here's what he's done off the second race restart, right? Subtle weaving. So he's not weaved aggressively enough to where the FIA are going to pull him up, which is techie. Maybe they should be, but he's weaving just enough to materially diminish the impact of the slipstream on Leclerc and Lewis. Levels. He's thinking these things through in a way that I don't think any other drivers currently are. Listen, I've said it a gazillion times and I'm going to say it again. That dude is going to be really bloody difficult to beat. He's thinking through these things. A chess player, a grandmaster of a racing driver is Max Verstappen now, and I think it's bonkers. Charles Leclerc, Pedlers, has a problem. That's his 10th pole without a conversion. How? I think Ferrari have themselves an issue in that they have a very, very fast car, but a car that's not capable of converting its pace in qualifying session into race pace. There's just a material drop off each and every single time, and I think they need to hold an inquest, because it's chaos now. It feels like something that's terminal. Now, you can debate their strategy every single day of the week. Ultimately, it was a bit of a dud. In real time, when they went onto the hards, I thought Lewis, I'll be honest with you, I thought Lewis might have some problems. Turns out, though, again, that's such a tyre eater is that SF23 of a Scuderia Ferrari package in 2023 that Lewis didn't even have any problems. On the mediums towards the latter stage of the race. It's crazy. So Checo Perez then 39 points ahead going into this Grand Prix. Obviously, due to that first turn incident, he won't pick up points. Lewis Hamilton nails a very decent second place. I'll say that. Ultimately, though, as far as I'm concerned, the man who wants to see Lewis compete for the 8th Drivers' Championship, the record-breaking 8th Drivers' Championship, they're still so far behind that Red Bull. Listen, I wrote down some numbers just before the race restart, the red flags. To the field, Max Verstappen had 19 seconds on them. 16 seconds over 32 laps. That's half a second a lap, Pedlers, if my maths is right. That Red Bull in the hands of Max Verstappen is ridiculously dominant. Yeah, Boogie Boy, appreciate you, bruv. Do me a favour and like this video. Subscribe if you're not already. I'm really, really concerned. And I know that Mercedes are developing their car in the right direction. But yet and still, when there's not anomalous circumstances like a bumpy track, like altitude, like brake issues with Max Verstappen or brake balance issues, I just think that RB90, and then they're only going to get faster, by the way, next year. They're not going to get any slower, not with Adrian Newey already getting his head around the concept and everybody only now converging on the RB19 concept. I think their dominance is I think they're more dominant than they're letting on. 16 seconds, 32 laps. What are we doing? That's daft. Oh, it's chaos. Ferrari strategy we've gone through. Sainz and Leclerc, interesting dynamic that it looked like they wanted to use Leclerc. Okay, firstly, Sainz undercut Leclerc for the first. I think, to be fair, Leclerc's gap over Sainz was sufficient to ultimately, to the point where it ultimately didn't make a difference. However, there's a point there when they were asking a question as to whether Leclerc could slow down to help Sainz cover off. I think it was Russell. Like, what's that about? Leclerc is the driver. Okay, so Sainz has the racing brain and is the assertive guy in the strategic meetings. That much is true. However, Charles Leclerc, if you're talking about pace, Charles Leclerc is the guy to take Ferrari to the next level. He is the Michael Schumacher. Let him be that. Scuderia Ferrari, please. Frederick Vasseur, you know him from F2 and Feeder Formula. Let Charles Leclerc grow into that butterfly. Stop doing this nonsense. They keep subverting him, right? I don't think that's good. And I think that's a plot line that we need to pay attention to. Mr. Leclerc pits on. Okay, let me talk about this strategy stuff. There was a 43% chance. If you look at historic precedent, there was a 43% chance of a safety car that race. And I think Ferrari, their strategy looked dodgy in the end, right? But in going long that first stint, let's remember Charles Leclerc pitted on lap 32. They were only 2 laps away from capitalising on that safety car. 2 laps. That would have completely changed the complexion of the race because they would have had track position over Max Verstappen. They were barking up the wrong tree, just that the racing gods called them 2 laps shy. That's bonkers. Can you imagine if Charles Leclerc had run that long? Changed his tyres during the race restart. Oh my God, it'll put them right in the box. Ultimately, you've got to argue each and every single time that Max probably would have got it done. Nevertheless, even that notwithstanding, but they changed the race. I think they were onto something. Although most of these races, if memory serves, have a much higher percentage probability of safety car. 43% of the time at the Mexico City Grand Prix is relatively low. I'd argue then, even though they were very close to being on the receiving end, on the good end of an outcome, of a safety car outcome, I'd argue that their process is fudge. I still think, say all that to say this, I still think there's something going on awry when Ferrari are in their strategic meetings. It's not quite right, is it? Their processes, not quite right, man. Max's gentle weave. I've got to talk about it again. I know I've talked it off the race restart. So all eyes on the race restart, man. Again, you can argue the merits of doing a standing start versus a restart under safety car. I prefer the standing start. I just want to rewatch it. I watched it a couple of times in live because I was like, what's he done there? How's he got a good start and then managed, notwithstanding a slipstream, managed to get his nose ahead, keep his nose ahead into turn 1, and he's doing one of these, isn't he? It's so subtle, but he does it so well, does Max. He got a good enough launch, and then he's just doing one of these down the straight, and I'm like, Charles can't hook up the slipstream properly enough to challenge him to turn 1. And I think it's genius, peddlers, each and every single time, particularly sack off all of the other Max Verstappen racecraft and his overtaking moves and his ability to manage a race in real time and think through and capitalize on all of his opponent's weaknesses, do proper race restarts and cater to the guy behind. Like, he's doing all these things that are madness each and every single time. But they're subtle now. The things that he's adding to his game, like, okay, so he's always done that weave, but it's a subtle weave. It's just so he's playing the system right. This is tax avoidance, not tax evasion. He's playing the system. So subtle are his direction changes that he will never get called by race control. But it's effective enough to minimize the slipstream to where Charles Leclerc is never going to get a bite at him. And on the ensuing corners, Charles Leclerc needs to worry about Lewis Hamilton. And Max is he's gone. 2-3 seconds down the road. Before you know, he's brilliant, man. Love or hate the chap. At this point, you've got to admire and appreciate the dude for his racecraft. I will be honest, peddlers. He's operating on a different level. And this is what I'm going to say. I keep saying it and I'm going to keep saying it. Good luck beating that fella. You're gonna need stuff. You're gonna need a car. You're gonna need 0 unforced errors to beat that dude, Max Verstappen, over the course of a 24 race season. You're gonna need to be pitch perfect, man. I'm telling you. Good luck anyone trying to beat him. I'll say that much. We talked about Max's gentle weave. Lando gets a terrible start. Lando's got to be driver of the day, right? You guys let me know. I'm keen to see. Yeah. Oof. You guys have gone 51%, Lando 49%, Danny Rick. Here's where I am. I'm not sure. I don't really want to give it to Lando on the back of the bad start, right? If you make such a big mistake, it's tough for me to give that chap driver of the day. But the bloody overtake on George Russell, I'm telling you, I loved that. And here's why I loved that. Let me give you the context, table setting. He'd been told over the radio, we know what time it is with George Russell. He's an all or nothing guy. Brackets, be guarded when you approach him and be very guarded when you try, if you try, and pull an overtake on him. So again, Lando Norris has put his Max Verstappen cap on, hasn't he? On the approach to George, he's not going to do a Checo Perez on George Russell, because that's only going to end in one way. 2 DNFs, 1 for Lando Norris and 1 for George Russell. He knows who George Russell is, and the best of them, the best F1 peddlers to ever do it, have this knack of being able to cater to adjust their approach depending on the characteristics, the personality and the driving style of the driver that they're trying to overtake. Genius from Lando Norris. He doesn't force it. He just pushes and attacks. You see him pull out. He lets George know that he's there on the straight a couple of times. He's applying pressure. He realizes that George's tires are falling off and he forces the mistake and pounces. I absolutely love that. And he doesn't do the Checo Perez thing. He chooses food before he eats it. Right? Once he forces the mistake, he pulls. It's not quite a switchback. He does the dive bomb up the inside of the right-hander, but he kind of has to set it up via a switchback even in the precursor corner. I love that move from Lando Norris. And against all Cameron F1 rules, because he made a big mistake in the race restart, the start of the race restart, I have to give that dude driver of the day just because of that bloody move. The move on George Russell made me well happy. I think Lando Norris is going places. I've argued with Shez and Baxty on the shakedown before on the merits of Piastri versus Lando. I've always had this feeling in my heart that Lando Norris is going places. Of the next ones, so here's your top tier: Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, in my humble opinion, for what it's worth. Of the next tier down, I think Lando Norris is right there at the top, closely followed by Charles Leclerc, closely followed by George Russell. That's the way I have it. I will be honest. I think Lando is the truth. Having followed him in feeder formula, I think that dude's got something. I will be honest. Piastri and Tsunoda, lap 47. Who was the clumsiest? Said Mr. Martin Brundle. What do you mean he was the clumsiest? Sadly for Yuki Tsunoda, it was him. And I think the way that you explain that incident, Yuki Tsunoda has been unlucky for a couple of races now, and he's lacking on race time. I don't think he's come here to this race 100% practiced, has he? He's lacking track time. And I think that move was indicative of that. It was a bit of a sloppy move. It wasn't as precise as we're used to from Yuki Tsunoda. And sadly, he's ruined his race with that, hasn't he? And I think also that what feeds into Yuki Tsunoda's very laissez-faire, lax decision-making there is the fact that his teammate on the opposite side of the garage in Danny Rick is absolutely bossing it. Karan Chandak wasn't shy, saying that position there, Danny Rick picking up points, could mean ultimately 20 million to AlphaTauri at the end of the season. And that, friends, is chaos. That's absolute chaos. Danny Rick has been a wrecking ball since he came back. And I, for one, didn't expect him to come back that viciously. I didn't think he was going to come back so fresh, so reinvigorated. He's levels. He's that chap. Absolutely levels. Fair play to the chap. And then finally, the message to Oscar, isn't it? You need to talk about team orders, don't we, peddlers? I feel like, I mean, it's a message that he had to get. And the message went something like this: mate, if this is your pace, then you're going to need to move over for Lando, isn't it? If you can find half a second, then cool. After which, almost immediately, Oscar Piastri, he locks up, doesn't he? And that's chaos. Oh my God. Come on, Oscar, you're better than that, son. I want to say, he's only a rookie. I shouldn't be so harsh on him because he's only a rookie yet and still. And because he's performed so well, we forget that. And I think we're a bit too hard on Mr. Piastri sometimes. But again, it's a burden on my heart to hear such a young, promising driver have his hopes and dreams of beating his teammates stamped upon. And Lando was faster ultimately. McLaren made the right decision, but I don't know. I don't like hearing those team orders, just as I don't like hearing them insinuate, Scuderia Ferrari that is, that Charles Leclerc needs to hold back and loop Carlos Sainz in. It's techie. Lewis Hamilton, let me talk about Lewis very quickly and then I'll leave you guys to your Sunday evening. It's a good drive from Lewis, isn't it? It is a good drive from Lewis. I'm harsh on Lewis. I hold Lewis. You know what I think about Lewis peddlers? I hold him as one of the greatest peddlers that I've ever seen in life. And so with that said, I think I was a tad as Foster. It is a shame, isn't it? Talking in reference to the Checo Perez interview, heartbroken, and he was so honest. But Danny Rick was absolutely amazing. You are absolutely on the money. Checo Perez does need to be worried. He absolutely does need to be worried, and that makes me sad to say that. But you know what? This is F1, and it's very cutthroat. I was a bit disappointed with Lewis Hamilton's start. I can't lie. But overall, it was a fantastic drive from the fella. I think he's getting his mojo back. Lewis Hamilton's line of trajectory is going to be one of these. As the car continues to develop and get better and get quicker, the gap between Mercedes and Red Bull grow ever closer. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think you're going to see Lewis bloom and become a butterfly, and he's going to start to outperform, and you're going to see these performances become more frequent. Once he's got a dog underneath him, it's always going to be a problem. I'll say that much. But as they improve and get better, you're going to see the Lewis Hamilton of old come. But I still don't think that drive from him was it, though. I still don't think he's operating at his highest level. I don't know. I didn't think this was bona fide Lewis Hamilton this weekend. It was a very, very good drive. Don't get it twisted. But I'm still perturbed and upset by the gap between him and Red Bull. Now, that's not all his fault, is it? That's probably not even mostly his fault. The car is going to be the bulk of that differential. But I don't know. Great drive from Lewis, but not the greatest. He's not where he needs to be just yet. Now Bottas almost got strolled. Oh my gosh, yeah, Stroll and Bottas was techie, wasn't it? I think I blame Bottas for the Lance Stroll incident. I think Martin Brundle summed it up brilliantly on the broadcast that ultimately Bottas was like, he's a bit spiteful from Valtteri, wasn't it? Just a bit. He was just like, no, you're not coming past here, mate. I'm not having it. And it was one of those ones where they'd been back and forth on a couple of corners. Lance is still crazy though. Bless him. He's had a real hard time of it of late, but the weaving, he's like a danger mouse, isn't he? He's the weaving on track, not the cheeky, subtle Max Verstappen move that you can't get penalised for. Aggressive weaving in the braking zone. You can't do that. You can't do that, Lance. It's dangerous, bro. Far too dangerous. No, but Lewis was very good today. He was very good. I wrote down something in my notes saying that there was yeah. Oh no, the overtake was good, wasn't it? Oh my god, there you go. What am I talking about? Okay. Lewis is still improving, but there are signs of life. The overtake from Lewis Hamilton on Charles. Are you joking me? Oh my gosh, Cameron, the blasphemy. Props, Sir Lewis, Carl, Davidson, Hamilton. That move, I know you guys are watching that and getting flashbacks of Barcelona 2016. I was just waiting for Lewis Hamilton's car to spin around. But you know what? He had to get that move done in the latter stage of the race then, because he was on mediums. And in order to make that strategy work, he needed to overtake Charles Leclerc on the slower, ostensibly slower, white-labelled hard tyres. I loved that move from Lewis Hamilton. It was a do-or-die moment. And you know what? I was talking back and forth with Baxty the Shakedown on this. I was scared that Lewis was going to be a bit gun-shy off the back of the accident with George Russell a couple of weeks ago. But he wasn't. He wasn't. Lewis Hamilton again. I'm loving that. That was a god-tier overtake from Lewis Hamilton on Monegasque Charles Leclerc up the inside. And it was for all the marbles because he needed to get it done then. I don't hate that from Lewis Hamilton. There is signs of life. He's not going anywhere. Is he just yet? Okay, so he's getting a bit older. Is he at the peak of his powers in his prime as at October 23? Probably not. But is he still good? Absolutely. Is he good enough to win a championship? To be confirmed. Absolutely. Submit. Lance is a weapon, isn't he? He's a liability. He's a liability. And I'll make this excuse for him as an empath. I understand why he's coming there. A couple of them have come in there today with a do or die mentality, a win it or bin it mentality. Namely, Checo, Perez, Lance Stroll. And their story arc is very similar, right? Poor form the past couple of races, getting to the point where people are starting to ask about their merits in that seat. Do they deserve to keep that seat? Both Lance and Checo Perez going into the 2024 season. Well, it's a question, and once again, it's to be confirmed, yet to be seen. So these guys are playing for all the marbles, right? Both Checo Perez and Lance Stroll needed good performances, and I don't hate. Listen. Sometimes you got to be, you've got to lean into the risk, right? As per the late great Ayrton Senna, if you no longer go for a gap as a racing driver, then you're no longer a racing driver. Techie, right, Perez, I'm going to be back tomorrow. I need to go to bed and get some sleep. Thank you so much for joining. Max Verstappen now has 10 race wins. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, there you go, Hando. You've corrected me on that stat. Max is just owning Charles Leclerc, isn't he? But I think some of that is the car. We need to have a conversation about this another time. How much of that is the car and how much of that is the driver? I think you can argue that Charles isn't clinical enough, but I think the bulk of that variance that Max has taken 10 wins from Charles' last 10 poles, I think you can argue the bulk of that is that RB19 being a rocket ship. Max Verstappen also being very clinical in his conversion. Oh, it's chaos. And that's it, peddlers. I'm going to be back. I'll be talking with the guy, Tomo, for a cheeky impromptu shakedown tomorrow. And that'll be released on Tuesday on all platforms here. Not here, the Mothership channel. I don't know, here or the Mothership channel. I'm not sure. There are loads of thoughts going on in my head. That's why I'm not my usual articulate or inarticulate self today. I'm thinking about the channel. I'm thinking about the direction that the channel needs to go in. The edited videos are nice, but I don't know. We'll talk, peddlers. We'll talk. Good night, Frank. I hope you're well, man. But no, listen, thank you for joining this post-race debrief. I'm going to start trying to do them more often because I enjoyed them. I hope you enjoy them too. this will be uploaded on a podcasting platform. You're listening on a podcasting platform, do me a favor, leave a 5-star review. If you're watching on the YouTubes, smash out a cheeky like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and as always, between now and next time, remember to look but never stare.